Care for some wood pulp on your sketty? Enjoy a hot lentil latte?
What's up, everybody? We're finna react to some of these fake foods that we've been consuming on a daily basis. So we got to do a little more research in what we feeding our kids, because you never know.
Sipping a dirty chloroform teeny? When it comes to these culinary fake-outs, the joke's on you. You've probably suspected that the Parmesan cheese that comes in a can and doesn't have to be refrigerated might not actually be Parmesan cheese. And depending on which brand you buy, you might be right. Back in 2016, Bloomberg News reported that Castle Cheese Inc. was plumping up its cans of so-called 100% real Parmesan cheese with, wait for it, wood pulp.
What? Man, they putting some wood pulp in Parmesan cheese. Man, it's some bullshit.
As you might know, goats can eat wood pulp, so technically it could be described as food. But you're not a goat.
That's just shocking. That's disgusting.
Here's the thing. The Castle cheese wood pulp appeared in the form of cellulose, which is commonly used as an anti-clumping agent in food. But content should...
Man, think about all the pieces that we be eating wood with our pieces.
Exceed 2% to 4%, and it can't be added just to bump up the weight, and therefore profit to the product. The company's 100% Parmesan also didn't contain any Parmesan. Instead, they used cheaper cheeses like white cheddar and mozzarella.
Yeah, they call that substituting, when they swap one thing for another one. But that's false advertising. If you're saying it's Parmesan, it should be Parmesan.
For most of us, white fish just looks like white fish, and we count on grocery store labeling to tell us what we're buying. But seafood suppliers know this, and that's why they sometimes get away with mislabeling a cheaper piece of fish as something more expensive. After all, once it's fried up and drenched in lemon juice, even a professional chef might not be able to identify it. According to conservation organization Oceana, roughly 21% of commercially available fish isn't correctly labeled. This means when you drop $32 per pound on what you think is Chilean sea bass, you might actually be buying tilapia, which sells for less than $10 a pound.
Damn, man. Shit, you eating that nasty ass tilapia. Shit, you gonna have the shits.
Now you know you can just pick up the tilapia, ditch the packaging, and call it whatever you want. Speaking of not being able to pinpoint proteins, there's a good chance you can't tell the difference between beef and horse meat either. Let's just think back to 2012 and 2013 when the fine people of Britain were eating hamburgers that were 29% horse meat. And that
Hey, eating that horse meat. Boy, I'm telling you. Hey, we have to look into that a little more. Hey, I don't know what they might be doing that shit over here in the U.S.
That had been going on for at least 10 months and possibly up to 5 years, according to The Guardian. The culprit? Anglo-Irish beef processors, which wasn't just a backyard operation. It was Europe's beef processing behemoth. Some of Britain's biggest grocery store chains, including Tesco and Aldi, sold the horse burgers, which were made with meat from up to 40 different suppliers. And just in case that isn't gross enough, the supplier responsible for adding at least some of the horse meat was also mixing it with previously frozen beef that was so spoiled it was green.
Oh, man. Not only was it horse meat, yeah, spoiled meat, old. Man, this shit's some sickening stuff, man. Yeah, be careful what you eat.
Anyone else craving a nice juicy burger right about now?
Yep.
Olive oil has a distinct scent and flavor, but when you're comparing...
Yeah, I heard about that fake olive oil that's been going around. So you definitely better buy it from a reputable source, or you might get... get the flip flops.
olive oil with extra virgin olive oil, things get a little more complicated. You also might not be able to tell if your bottle has been diluted with, say, canola oil. That's not just a problem because no one wants to spend $17.99 on a bottle of fake EVOO. It's also because many people choose olive oil for its heart-healthy benefits. There was a lot of noise about fake olive oil around 2015, but we've since learned that most of the olive oil sold in the United States is genuine. But there are still some isolated incidents of fake EVOO intended for U.S. consumption. As Reuters
EVOO mean extra virgin olive oil, and when they say most, what is that? 75% is good, 25% is bad.
Reported in 2017, the literal mafia was labeling olive oil pulp, the stuff that's left over after the olives are pressed, as extra virgin and exporting it to the States. Read your labels, buy from trusted sources, and nobody gets hurt. Capiche? The first time you bought saffron, you were probably surprised to open up that tiny $20 jar and find that you needed a magnifying glass to locate the threads. Pound for pound, saffron is the most expensive spice in the world, and if you actually wanted to buy a whole pound of it, you're gonna have to shell out around $1,500.
Yeah, me personally, I don't know nothing about no saffron. Never used it personally, so I don't know.
And that's just for the cheap stuff. But at any price point, you want to know that you're buying saffron rather than something like, say, corn silk that's been dyed red.
We have sort of a problem here.
Saffron is expensive because it's incredibly labor-intensive to harvest. Each flower has only 3 stigmas, and they must be hand-picked. So it's actually not that shocking that this particular spice is frequently adulterated. Real saffron is sometimes mixed with corn silk threads or coconut filaments and red dye, but sometimes the product doesn't contain any saffron at all. According to Business Insider, Spain reported in 2010 that it exported 190,000 kilograms of saffron, but Spanish farmers said they only harvested around 1,500 kilograms. Something's a little spicy about that math. Turmeric comes from the root of the plant, so it's a little easier to harvest than saffron, but it still gives food that sought-after bright yellow color. But, surprise, turmeric gets adulterated too. According to natural food retailer Zazira, manufacturers sometimes add dyes like metanil yellow and Sudan red to give it an even brighter yellow color. They might also mix it with other roots like cassava, which is poisonous in its uncooked form, or related species like white ginger and wild turmeric. In some parts of the world, turmeric has even been mixed with lead chromate, which has a bright yellow color and can also cause lead poisoning. So,
man, that's tough, man. Just sitting back thinking, and we definitely got to get back in that garden, man, because you trusting these people to put that stuff on your shelf. And then think about it, if you're shopping at the Family Dollar, the Dollar Generals, the poor side of things, you definitely gonna be getting in touch with some of this fake stuff on a regular.
Really, if you want your food to be yellow, maybe just go with yellow food coloring instead. If you've ever bought dollar store honey, you were probably shocked at the price compared to a Whole Foods or Erewhon. Look a little closer at the label though, and
yeah, man, that honey though, they've been talking about that for a while. They've been mixing with syrup, putting all type of fructose and stuff like that in there to simulate honey when it ain't even honey at all.
you'll see why. You're likely buying something called blend syrup, which you thought was just honey because it came dressed up as a cute little plastic bear. Blend syrup doesn't even list honey as the first ingredient. Number 1 is corn syrup and number 2 is honey. But at least the manufacturer is being clear-ish on the label. Still, in other cases, the 100% honey you thought you were buying isn't anything close. It's basically blend syrup without the honesty. According to Insider, honey is the 3rd most faked food in the world. In 2013, Wired UK reported that
yeah, I definitely can believe that.
American honey is quite often doctored with corn or rice syrup and might even be flavored with unrefined sugar. Unfortunately, there's plenty of evidence that this type of honey is still being sold in the US and Canada. Kobe beef is
Man, before we get on this Kobe beef, man, they even faking the honeycombs, man. So sometimes you get that fake honey with the honeycombs. Man, that shit fake as hell.
for its heavy marbling, which makes it incredibly tender, flavorful, and expensive. If you order Kobe steak in a restaurant, you can expect to pay around $200 for 4 ounces of meat. Naturally, this makes this Wagyu variety big business for American restaurants. But here's the rub. Some American restaurants are playing fast and loose with their definitions. In 2009, the Miami New Times reported that some of the steaks sold as Kobe beef in Miami restaurants weren't technically Kobe. In order to qualify for that name, the cattle must be born and raised in the Hyogo Prefecture in Japan. It was kind of like buying champagne that's not from, Champagne.
$126 worth of beef. Y'all not worthy.
Evidently, some restaurants claimed ignorance when it came to labeling requirements for Kobe beef. And on the surface, it might seem like a superficial distinction. But Kobe beef comes from a specific breed of cattle and must meet certain requirements.
Man, Man, there's a lot of fake beef going around, and they adding some type of adhesive to it, sticking like a pork cut, quality beef, and sticking it together and basically packaging that shit up and putting it on the shelf. It's crazy.
It's also closely tracked so that its limited supply can be authenticated. If you're finding discount Kobe beef, it's probably not the real deal. So what would you say if you learned that your favorite cup isn't 100% Arabica or even 100% coffee? According to a 2020 study
Man, they better not be doing nothing to the coffee, bro.
published in the journal Foods, coffee is often mixed not just with barley and other grains, but also with nuts, legumes, and other vegetables. Some grounds might even be adulterated with much less edible things like husks and twigs. And this particular problem will probably get worse as climate change reduces the acreage suitable for coffee growing. Studies predict a shrinkage of around 50% by 2050. In the short term, you can make sure you're getting 100% coffee by buying only whole beans, which
Yeah, I was just gonna say that you might have to start buying your whole beans now and hey, making coffee that way.
can't be manipulated in the same way as the pre-ground stuff. But either way, it's still pretty tough to know whether it's 100% Arabica or Arabica plus something else. Enjoy your overpriced orange mocha frappuccino while you still can. One day soon, it may be more lentil than latte. Most of the doctored food that reaches the United States and other countries isn't likely to make you sick or kill you. And though obviously economically motivated, food fraud excuses can range from doing whatever it takes to stay in business to an endless greed for money. Typically, though, there isn't anything willfully malicious regarding food adulteration apart from the obvious desire to pocket more of your hard-earned cash.
Don't do it, kid.
Sometimes, though, products are mixed with things that can truly harm you. And though these kinds of adulterations are indeed done with profit in mind, there's also a much more sinister element to them: money over human lives. In 2013, the BBC warned British Christmas shoppers to use caution when buying certain types of alcohol, particularly vodka. The warning was based on a doubling of the amount of fake vodka that was seized by the government that year, some of which contained antifreeze, industrial alcohol, and chloroform. Yes,
Oh shit. Man, I ain't buying no vodka. That motherfucker put rubbing alcohol in your shit.
it's that stuff they use in the movies to instantly knock a person out. Of course, it doesn't really work like that, but long-term exposure might lead to cancer. Typically, adulterated vodka is a lot cheaper, but thrifty shoppers probably won't be thinking of their Cosmotini causing long-term health problems like blindness, nerve damage, or even death. If you buy free-range, pasture-raised, or grass-fed products, you pay a premium for animals that have been raised in humane conditions. All of us just have to trust that the products we buy actually are what they say they are on the label. Unfortunately, there can be a disconnect between what consumers think of as humane and what industrial producers think is humane. Sometimes the problem isn't even a matter of ignoring the rules, it's just that regulations don't really work the way we think they should. For example, in 2019, a company called Nellie's Free Range Eggs, which sold its product in a carton featuring a charming young child pictured in a green pasture with chickens, faced a lawsuit that alleged the company actually kept its hens in sheds, and that each bird had just over 1 square foot in which to go free range.
It just seems so unsanitary.
Nellie's argued that their hens were in fact free-range according to the law, which only requires chickens to have access to the outdoors for at least 6 hours a day, according to J.D. Supra. The court disagreed, mostly because even if Nellie's
Yeah, I might have to do a video on these chicken farms and pig farms and stuff to try to show y'all how these chickens and this food that we're getting on our tables are, how they bring it to our table.
eggs were technically free-range according to the law, their website implied they were much more free-range than the legal standard. Just as it's hard to know based on the package what free range really entails, it's also difficult to determine whether the food you're eating is really organic or non-GMO. Most consumers think organic means grown without pesticides, but it
Man, when it comes to them GMOs, man, I'll say about 75%, maybe more, is all GMO. If you go in the store and they got them numbers on there, you already know what you're eating. And the long-term effects we won't know until about 25 to 30 more years.
does not. Organic farmers can use pesticides as long as they are derived from natural sources, like pyrethrins, which come from some chrysanthemum flowers. Still, according to the CDC, even those aren't totally harmless, considering that high exposure can cause dizziness, convulsions, and blacking out.
Are you on drugs?
Organic crops can also become contaminated by pesticides that drift over from other farms. So the presence of synthetic pesticide residue on an organic tomato may or may not mean it hasn't been grown organically. But organic foods aren't routinely tested for the presence of synthetic pesticide residue, and therein lies the problem. Even if most organic farmers play by the rules, anytime you have a high-demand, high-value product that looks exactly like a cheaper one, you're going to have brands passing that lower-value product off as the expensive one. In 2019, a Missouri farmer was accused of selling $142 million worth of organic grain, the majority of which wasn't actually organic, over several years. He later admitted to the scheme and was convicted after pleading guilty to a single count of wire fraud.
There you have it, man. Some more of the fake foods that's on our shelves. So when you go in them stores, you better do some research. If not, you're going to be eating that wood Parmesan.